And here's Jessie.
Sweet. Thank you. Good morning, guys. How are you? It feels like it's fall. The other day, I pulled out my tub, and I had all my scarves and my boots, and I literally saw one leaf, just one, and it fell on the ground, and I was like, okay, it's a new season. It's time for me to change my entire wardrobe, but I was like, okay, nobody else is doing this. I'm a little too anxious about this new season starting, so I opted for no boots today, no scarf, so it's still summer, apparently. But yeah, thank you guys for being here. It's kind of crazy, Chuck being all over the place, but it's also really awesome to have the opportunity to speak. I really enjoy spending my Sunday mornings with you guys, and the opportunities that I get to talk with you guys is even better because I get to see all of your beautiful faces, not just for a little bit of time while I'm up here during worship, but like the entire service, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, so this morning we're going to talk a little bit about moving forward. We're going to talk about the steps that it takes in order to get to that position in your life. Sometimes it's not easy to move forward. Seasons come and seasons go. Some are good, some are bad, and some are even really exciting. And there are seasons in my life where I'm just not really anticipating what's going to happen. And then there are seasons where you just don't know what's going to happen. And I think that everybody in this building can identify a little bit with what those seasons look like, how unpredictable they can be. And this morning, I want to ask you guys a favor to just be thinking right now, what is it that has happened in your life? What events have you gone through that have brought you to the point you're at right now? What are some of the things that have just changed your world? And I don't want you, you don't have to say these out loud. I just want you to be thinking, what have been some challenges in your life? What has what's altered the circumstances in your life and made you have to think differently? Sometimes, like I said, the seasons are really unbearable, and those seasons can look like a loss of a job, going through a divorce, losing a loved one. Those are pretty unbearable seasons, and I don't think we intend for those things to happen. We don't anticipate those seasons. But now I want you to think of other things that have happened in your life. What are some of the good things that have changed your life? Like getting married and having a baby, buying a house. And I'm sure your gears are turning by now. You can already start to see just how life started at some point, and you're here where you're at. Well, what happened to all that time? And look at who I am today. Look at what I'm going through right now, and just being thankful that we have a God that's brought us all this way. And you're going to get to go through a lot more of it. So we're going to dive in and talk about 3 steps, 3 actions that we're going to take today in order to keep a positive cycle in our lives going. To always anticipate moving forward, but doing it in faith when it's hard. And with the challenges that come with it, with these hurricanes, I have a really hard time connecting with the reality of it because I'm so far away. For some people, it's a little bit easier, but now that we have family, that I have Ian's family down in Puerto Rico, and these hurricanes are going straight for their hometowns, it's really unsettling for me. And I believe in life that we all go through hurricanes. And hurricanes are not kind, they're not nice. They've got 5 categories, potentially another one if they decide to get a little bit bigger. And they'll make their decision on what they want to do, to the land that it hits. They'll make their decision about what type of damage they want to do. And so knowing that we have family down there right now changes my perspective a lot about who God is in this situation and what he's doing for our family right now down there and how he's working in that. But back to these events, these good and these bad events, they're life-changing, but they definitely require something of you individually. And they require a response from you. How are you going to respond to it? How am I going to move forward after this event has happened to me? Because we're not meant to dwell in those seasons forever. We know that. We're just not. And if you think about it, when you're buying a house, you don't just buy it and then get it. You have a monthly mortgage to pay for it. You've made a commitment. You've made a choice to respond to buying your house by staying committed to it. You've chosen to make the commitment, and at times that commitment may not be easy. and you'll have to make choices on how you're going to stay committed to your decision. But just as much as buying a house or even the hurricanes in Florida and Texas are changing lives, so can spiritual alterations change our lives as well. Marrying Ian changed my life in a completely good way. There's no doubt about that day that all of my love and all of my life had come together in this one single moment to think, whoa, this is a big event that's changing my life. But that event also called me to act on the vows that I said to Ian for the rest of my life. I made a promise to him that we were going to be together until the day I died, and that's a huge commitment. I responded to him putting this ring on my finger by making those vows. And they challenged me. Those vows, they challenge you. I mean, raise your hand if you know the challenge of vows. I mean, they challenge you to realize you have to empty yourself of yourself to make room for God to come in and equip you with the strength and love that I will need to love Ian well. And I responded to that situation with action, that I was going to make an effort to try and empty myself of self so that I could fill myself up with God and just ask the Holy Spirit to come in and work on my behalf. It's not just like that for marriage, guys. When you've lost someone and you don't know what to do, asking God to remove you from the situation so that he now has a place to stand is your call to act. So with responding to that, whatever events have brought you to where you are, or the seasons that you've moved through, that you've taken action to, whether it be marriage, because we know that we can't just let marriages sit back and work themselves out, losing a loved one, it's totally devastating, but we can't let hopelessness and depression consume us. Sleepless nights with your newborn baby, yeah, your baby's beautiful, but man, I bet you wish you could have some sleep. It's a huge commitment. It's a huge commitment. And everyone in here knows life has challenges. If you don't, I really would like to talk to you because challenges are not my favorite thing to deal with, and I would like to know how you're doing it. But we have to act within our circumstances and make spiritually motivating choices to press forward. We have to make the choice to lean into God more than ourselves. Without these decisions, we can become inactive in our faith as we choose to depend more and more on ourselves than we do on God. And when I look back on my life, I don't hesitate to show people, where my life changed here, and then again over there, and then another time, like a few months ago. I don't hesitate to tell people that my life has changed. But when life throws us a curveball and knocks us down on our face, I think you can agree with me that it kind of rocks your world a little bit. You're not anticipating it. It can act like a hurricane coming in without any warning, stripping you of life and everything that you know it, and leaving you with seemingly nothing. As Pastor shares his experience down in Texas and he's talking about the damage that he's seeing, it's not pretty. These hurricanes don't intend to leave you with much hope. But you have a choice to become bitter or better from situations that happen to you. Better because you know restoration will happen, or bitter because you just can't let go of the things that you've lost. It's really actually a spiritually humbling experience when you do have your world turned upside down, but when you can see it through God's perspective. It really reminds you, like Kelly was saying, you are not important right now at this situation. God is. He's the only one that knows what to do for you in this situation. Making yourself small so that he can become big is a hard thing to do here in this world. So as humans, we don't tend to prioritize God's perspective above our own, and we can easily let, the darkness seep into our situations. It's so easy to do that. And we hold on so tightly that we forget somebody else is holding this life in their hands. God has his hands wrapped around the situation 100%. And I'm guilty. I'm totally guilty of responding to hurricanes with a human reaction of that of lost hope. There's no hope for this situation. And being depressed or feeling like a failure, it's natural. It's natural. It's something we fall into by default. But today we can change our perspective by making the choice to release the effects of our circumstance. We choose to accept the challenge with faith, and we're going to set ourselves up to respond to our situations by looking to God first. Are you guys ready to do that with me? Okay, cool. It's a heavy morning, guys. There's a lot going on, and I want to, just encourage you. I want you to know it's real, it's happening, but we're gonna walk out of here encouraged and motivated to do some pretty cool things in our lives. So here we go. I believe that everyone can become better from life's challenges by taking these 3 actions. So if you're writing things down, I'll go ahead and give you the points, and then we'll move into the first one. First one is the action to let go. The second one is to look up, and the third is to move forward. Let go, look up, and move forward. Say that. Let go, look up, move forward. Cool. Remember that. So letting go. What's the most important thing in your life right now? First thing that comes to your head, if you feel like shouting it out, shout it out. What's the most important thing in your life right now? Family. It's a huge one. If somebody came up to you and said, give it away, what would your response be? Give away your family. Give away your house. Give away your bank account. Give away all of your clothes. The chances are you'd hesitate. Hesitation would be involved for sure. You might even ask, well, what's the purpose of me giving this away to you? Why do you want that? Those are questions I would ask. Oftentimes when we're struggling to find purpose in life, it's because God is asking us to reevaluate our priorities. What am I living for right now in this present moment that I have placed before God? If that's a question that we have to ask ourselves every day to reevaluate our priorities, then ask it. I do. I have to. If we're honest with ourselves, our list of priorities at the end of the day could do this. My family is important to me. My marriage is important to me. My kids, my pets, my belongings. My. Me, myself, and I. Those are my priorities. When in reality, it should be everything I have and everything that I do points back to Jesus. Everything. Everything. There's a quote that I love so much, and I've read it so many times, and I've never been able to find the author. But it says, "May I never forget on my best day that I still need God as desperately as I did on my worst day." And that's a hard thing to remember, because the first thing that we think about when devastation hits is, where's God? What am I supposed to do? Jesus, I need you. But what about the days that are so good, where everything's going peachy keen jelly bean, and you forget to say, God, thank you for this. Continue to just give this to me. I praise you. I bring glory to your name because you have brought me a wonderful day. Simple as that. And we forget to do that many times, but when we're able to rearrange our priorities in life, to put God first, we place an emphasis on Christ in our testimonies. It allows us to say, yes, this was a terrible situation. Yes, I was exhausted. And ready to give up. But you know who pulled me through? God did. Testimonies without Christ are just Jessie's autobiography, or Ian's autobiography, or Kelly's autobiography. They're merely stories we have written about all of the accounts where we showed up in our lives. But testimonies, though, those are biographies that we get to tell about the endless accounts in our lives where God did all the work and changed us. When the superhero came in and saved the day, that's a way more exciting story to tell than about all the things I've done in my life. I'm boring. Nobody wants to hear about me all the time. But if you have somebody that's coming in your life and doing all the work for you and coming in at these times that you wouldn't expect it, people get hooked on that. People want to know who that is. There's really just such a great joy found in our suffering when we can rely on our Savior. True joy is found in that. And there's a promise that God gives us that things will work out for our good if we choose him above everything else. Let me read this scripture for you. 1 Peter 4:13. Instead, be very glad, for these trials make you partners with Christ in his suffering, so that you will have the wonderful joy of seeing his glory when it is revealed to all the world. He doesn't just let you suffer. He's with you in this. And even in Romans 8:28, and we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose. Not some things, but everything. That's why I want God on the top of my priority list, for those reasons. And if you feel like you've gone through hell and back, or you're even in it right now, and all you have left in your lungs to say is, Jesus, I love you. God will work for your good because he loves you that much more. If you can just find that small grain of faith, and if it's your dying breath and all you can say is, Jesus, I love you, he works for you on your behalf because he loves you that much more. And it may seem hard to let go, and to be able to do that and finally come to the end of your rope and say, I can't do this anymore. But the result from the choice of letting go has a far greater outcome than if we don't. The problem that is keeping you from running to God is what you're holding on to so tightly in your hands. Have you ever walked around your house and been talking on your phone, just like really furious that you can't find your phone? Have you ever done that? Or, you're like, I don't know. I've done that before. I'm like, where the heck? Like, I'm like literally calling somebody else to help me find my phone. Where the heck is my phone? Have you checked your hands? Okay, I'll talk to you later. Bye. I mean, it's as simple as that. Forgetting, just being so caught up in the patterns of the world and forgetting to look right here or right here and figure out what you're letting go, what you need to let go of. What are you holding on to so tightly? So let me read this excerpt from a song for you. And I want you to let it really speak to you on a spiritual level, okay? It says, don't let them in. Don't let them see. Be the good girl or boy you always have to be. Conceal, don't feel. Don't let them know. Well, now they know. I say that, to just kind of let that speak to you in a spiritual sense, but it's funny because it's from Frozen, a Disney movie. But this is like what the world tells us to do with our problems and with the ugly in our lives. Hide it. Like, it makes you look so weak. Put it away. Nobody cares. Nobody wants to see that. But this is what God says. It sounds a little something like this. Let it go. Let it go. Can't hold it back anymore. Let it go. Let it go. Turn away and slam the door. I don't care what they're going to say. Let the storm rage on. The cold never bothered me anyway. Like, I just picture God stepping down from heaven, looking at your circumstance, seeing Satan on the other side and I said, the cold never bothered me anyway, so we're going to close the door, we're going to let it go, and I said, let the storm rage on. Like, sassy Jesus getting up in here. That's what I see. Like, I like it, And it's like freeing, and like I was reading that, I'm like, this is really pathetic that I'm like going to let it go from Frozen to try and explain like this spiritual principle. But like when you read it and you set aside that it's like a Disney song, it's freeing and it's liberating when you can finally come to terms that what you're holding on to so tightly can be let go, and you need to let it go. When I was 2 years old, my parents got a divorce. And I grew up with minimal contact with my biological father. And he battled with alcohol addiction terribly. Absolutely terribly. And because of this addiction, it drove him to a life of isolation. And we didn't get to talk ever, really, other than a few phone calls I'd get here and there. So I grew up as a little girl wishing so bad I could have a relationship with my dad, wishing that he would change, wishing that things would be different. I asked a ton of why questions. Why? Why don't I have a dad, in my life? Why isn't my biological father choosing to be in my life and somebody else choosing to step in, my stepdad? Why is that? Why do I feel like I'm more loved by my stepdad than I am by my biological father? And then from, I don't know, from 2 until 13, that's a lot of time to be thinking about that kind of stuff. When I was 13 years old, my grandfather died, and that was my father's father. And there at the funeral was my dad. I saw him for the first time in 6 or 8 years. And that was a moment for me that shook my world. He looked so different, but I knew exactly who he was. And from that day on, I started, hanging out with my dad. I started building a relationship with him. In fact, one of the strongest relationships I have ever built in my entire life. Meanwhile, he still struggled with his addiction, and we talked about that openly. And a lot of times he said, I really want to stop because I love you. I really, really want to stop. But he never stopped. That was really hard for him to let go of. So in a matter of 3 years, since I was 13, in a matter of 3 years, my dad and I had become so close despite his alcoholism that I spent every moment I could with him, more time with him than I did with friends, more time than I did with my family. And I didn't go to church anymore on Sunday mornings because it gave me that much more time to spend with him. And he was my best friend, absolutely my best friend. And I was at the peak of my life. I loved it. I loved everything about it. I felt like all my why questions were finally being answered growing up. And I could finally let those go. But after 3 years of pure joy with my dad, it all went away in a matter of minutes. I got a phone call one day that somebody found my dad dead in his sleep. I did not anticipate that at all. I had just talked to him the day before, and now he's gone. So my world stopped completely. A Category 5 hurricane came in and wrecked my world. And I don't remember anything happening to me those 3 to 6 hours after hearing that news. I don't remember a single thing. And his death changed my life, and I dealt with a lot of emotional baggage from that. Now, fast forward to about 2 days ago. I was at home on the couch working on this message, and Ian came home after work, and we were talking about making plans for the evening and wanted to know what we could be doing together, maybe go out for dinner or whatever, and plans just weren't being made. We just couldn't come to agreement, and I was really getting frustrated. I was just like, whatever, I'll just stay home, it's fine, you can go do what you want. Come on, Jessie, grow up. But Ian, being the best husband ever that I could ever ask for, just kind of stopped and said, hey, what's going on? You're not okay. And I was like, no, I'm not. And I just started crying. I just started bawling. And in that moment, I realized that 7 years tomorrow is how long I've been without my dad. And I'm still holding on to some baggage from that, despite, all the grieving and all the mourning I've been through. And just when I thought all of my mourning was over, I realized I was dealing with anger. And I had been dealing with it for 7 years. Out of all things, anger. I was dealing with that. And I realized that because I was just so quick to get frustrated and so quick to get angry that plans weren't being made. Angry that my dad wanted so desperately to be a part of my life and see me get my license and drive a car. He wanted to see me graduate high school. He wanted to see me go to college. He wanted to see me get married and have kids, and he never got the chance. And I'm just now realizing that I have anger in my heart towards God about losing my dad. I'm not angry with God. I'm just angry about that situation having to happen at the time that it happened. and it being out of my control. So I can see how it's affected me negatively with my mental and my physical health. And for example, I'll give you guys a list here in a little bit just about the effects of negativeness and unforgiveness and anger in your heart does affect your health. But I also want you to know emotions are real, guys. Some people may say, why are you getting angry with God? Like, all he's ever done for you is good. Come on. You can't tell me you've been in those seasons where you haven't been just a little bit angry that things are not going the way you thought. Jesus had them. He flipped tables. He was so angry. I mean, they were real for him. He wept when he lost his friends. But he also found joy in good situations. And he knew how to love and build relationships. But one thing he didn't have in his heart that a lot of us still hold on to is unforgiveness. In the same way, unforgiveness and other negative feelings can choke us out, and they make us forget that forgiveness and letting go can be really freeing. So I want to read a couple of these health studies that are related to unforgiveness. This one is from Everett Worthington. It says, chronic unforgiveness, it causes stress. Why? Because every time people think of their transgressor, their body responds. Decreasing your unforgiveness cuts down on your health risk. Now, if you can forgive, that can actually strengthen your immune system. Further on, this is a collaborative study done by Worthington and some other colleagues. It says, over an extended period of time, unforgiveness can be experienced as negative emotions. For me, it was anger. That result in a cascade of biological and brain responses. Findings about the body's hormone response to unforgiveness reveal that unforgiveness is reflected in specific cortisol levels, adrenaline, and cytokine balance, with patterns that parallel those reported in people living with high stress. That's crazy. People deal with chronic stress all of the time, but the same effects from chronic stress come from harboring unforgiveness and negative emotions in our heart. These hormone patterns are known to compromise the immune system with the long-term consequence of leading to several identified chronic illnesses, and I'd be happy to give you the article so that you could read further on if you want to. But I just wanted to give you an idea about how damaging it is to not let go of unforgiveness, of anger, depression, whatever it is that you're dealing with right now, and how that can affect you on a much deeper level than just spiritually, but physically and mentally and emotionally too. And because I haven't let go of that anger within that specific area of my life, or unforgiveness in other areas of my life, it affects my health, it affects my marriage, my relationships, my ability to work, my ability to make plans on an evening. It affects that. But here's how Christ asks us to respond to things we can't let go of. Make allowance for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. Remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. Here's another one. Get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, and slander, as well as all types of evil behavior. Instead, be kind to each other, tender-hearted, forgiving one another just as God, through Christ, has forgiven you. Figuring out how to let go may not be the issue you're struggling with. Figuring out what to let go of may be. I didn't know that that I was still intensely grieving my father's death for 7 years the way I was, because I hadn't let go of some things that I needed to give over to God. And tomorrow I get to celebrate my dad's life and not grieve about it. It changes your perspective. It changes the way you feel. It changes the way you act in certain situations when you can just cry it out, get angry, and figure out that's what I've been dealing with this whole time, and then give it to God. Once you let go of something like that, the first step in becoming dependent on God occurs. You're starting to shave off a little bit of yourself so that you can stand a little bit closer to God, so that you can start to lean into Him. And from that point on, you only have one direction to start looking, and that's up. And that brings us to our second point. Look up. Have you ever tried to cross a set of monkey bars without letting go of the first bar? Have you ever tried to do that? If I hold on to that bar and I'm not willing to let go, where am I going to go? I'm not going anywhere. If you're not willing to let go, you're never going to move forward. But not only that, if you're not willing to let go and look up to the next bar, you don't know what direction you're going in your life. You could fall. You're depending on your own self. Oh, I don't need to look. I got this. Whoop, down you go. It's important to look up. Attempting to make it to the next level in your life by your own strength can lead us in failure. I want to share a story with you. I was at the park the other day with a little girl I was babysitting. And she's old enough to the point now where she's getting really risky when she sees the monkey bars. And so now they're not only like this little inanimate object that she runs around the playground, she actually wants to climb up and attempt how to work the monkey bars. So she was climbing up to the top, and she had her hands on the first rungs. And she would just kind of like swing her foot out like this. And then she'd get down. And she'd go back up, and she'd put her hands on the bars, and she would just kind of swing her feet a little bit. And I walked over to her, and I said, "Do you want me to hold your feet? And you want to try and cross?" And she was just like, I don't know if I'm willing to try that. And she held on so tightly, like her poor little knuckles were getting so white. But I was holding on to her feet. I wanted her to know that even if you look up and you're trying to move forward, if you fall, I've got you. It's okay. And, I had to keep telling her that, I've got you, I've got you, I've got you. And then finally, she looked up and she reached her hand to the next bar, and she moved to the next bar, and I had her the whole time. The third bar, she missed it, and she came back, but I had her. I wasn't going to let her fall. But if I hadn't been there, and she continued to hang on and just, look down at her feet, it focused all of the control on her. Looking down shows us who is seemingly in control by focusing all of the attention on ourselves. So go ahead. I want you to look down. Just look down for me. Now tell me, how hard is it for you to focus on anybody else other than yourself? If you're looking down, I can see my shoes, and I can see my legs, and I can see my shirt, but I can't see any of you guys, and I can't see, what's going on around me. And that does make it really hard to focus on God when we keep ourselves in that posture. When we face trials and devastation in our lives, here's most often the response. Okay, Jessie, you can pull through this. I know you're in a financial crisis right now. It'll all work out. You're good. You got this. You got this. Literally, physically. Some of us just kind of like pace the floor and look down, It's like a physical response too. If I hide my feelings, I can be strong for my family. It goes back to our list of most important things. Me, myself, and I. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. This type of thinking requires no God and no faith. And in reality, when we are looking down, we are saying we have control in our lives and we can act as God in our own lives. Yeah, that's hard to swallow. When you have to think, have I really put myself in that type of position? But get this. This is super cool. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. Because of the joy awaiting him, he endured the cross, disregarding its shame. Now he is seated in the place of honor beside God's throne. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up, and let us run with endurance the race that God has set before us. That's from Hebrews 12. Looking up does way more than just getting us through what we're going through. It helps us act on faith. It helps us trust in God, and it proclaims glory to Jesus' name. It goes back to the testimony. It places all the emphasis on the superhero that came in and saved your day. And you know what else? This is what I love about God. God, filled with his grace and his mercy, gently lifts up your head and says, I'm right here. That's all he does. He does not get angry with you for doing this for 40 years, for 7 years. He doesn't get angry with you for doing this because you know where he's at that entire time? He's like, okay, we can do this. I'm right here with you. I'm going to look up. I know what direction we can go in. Anytime, I'm right here. Our situation may not disappear in that very moment that we fix our eyes in Christ, but the situation does get put below God in its proper place for him to deal with in his own time. I'm going to read this story to you. It's about Peter walking on water. I'm sure some of you have heard it, but I'm just going to read it. Immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and cross to the other side of the lake, while he sent the people home. After sending them home, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. Night fell while he was there alone. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from land, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them, walking on the water. When the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. In their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost!" But Jesus spoke to them at once. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Take courage, I am here." Then Peter called to him, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you. Tell me to walk on the water." "Yes, come," Jesus said. So Peter went over the side of the boat, and he walked on the water toward Jesus. But when he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified and began to sink. "Save me, Lord," he shouted. Just immediately, Jesus reached out and grabbed him. "You have so little faith," Jesus said. "Why did you doubt me?" When they climbed back into the boat, the wind stopped. We are human. We fail to keep the faith. But encourage each other to never forget who is bigger than the circumstance you are under. Encourage each other to know that there will be seasons where it is so easy for you to walk on water. But then there's going to be seasons where you're going to try and do it on your own. And that may fail for you. But Jesus is always, always there. And I want to walk with him knowing he's always there. I'll share another story with you guys. I have a lot of stories for you this morning. It's like a life application sermon. But a few months ago, I went on a climbing trip with Ian and Corey. We went to Richmond, and we did some urban climbing, which is a little bit different than like your regular rock climbing. We actually found an old stilt that used to hold up a set of train tracks, and people climb up those things all the time. It's super cool. This climb was a little bit different, though, than climbs we had been on before, only because it was called lead climbing. And I'll explain what lead climbing is. But also, this little like stilt was straight up. And I'll show you a picture of it later, but we won't get to it right now. So with lead climbing, what you do is before you begin anything, you have one person go up, and they set the route for you. And they're holding ropes, and they're holding clips that are called carabiners. And they are climbing up the rocks without anybody, belaying them or holding a rope for them to be hoisted up, and they're hooking in the ropes to these anchors that are built into the wall. So they're setting the route. And as you do this, when you get to the top, then you establish an anchor and a pulley system that creates top rope climbing. Top rope climbing is where you have, I'm sure you guys have seen where people are holding on to the rope back here while the person is climbing, and they're pulling on the rope as they climb up, so if they slip and fall, they've got them. So the reason why lead climbing is a little bit sketchier is because when you anchor, you have about 3 to 5 feet to climb before you anchor into your next bolt. If you fall anywhere between those 3 and 5 feet, you fall 3 to 5 feet before the last anchor catches you, the last one that you built in. I don't like that. I'm not a fan of that. I don't like this whole free fall feeling. I like to know that I'm like, if I'm going to fall, it's just going to feel like I'm falling back from the wall and, somebody's got me. So once your lead climber set your route and anchored the rope at the top, then you start to do lead climbing. So these are a couple pictures of some people doing some lead climbing. And as you can see, they don't have a rope at the top because they're establishing the route. They're hooking in their rope to all these little anchors down at the bottom until they get to the very top. You go to the next slide. Thank you. And here's a better illustration of lead climbing versus top rope. Lead climbing is you doing it all on your own. This person down at the bottom acting like they're going to catch you when you fall, but really they're not even there for anything significant. And then the person over here that's doing the top rope climbing, they're actually working as a team, and that person will catch you if you fall. So, top rope lead climbing. Now, top rope. So me personally, I love, 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 love top rope climbing. I mean, honestly, there's like a difference in just mere facial expressions, like in these pictures. Like when people are lead climbing, they're like really nervous and like, if I make one wrong move, I'm done. And people in top rope climbing, it's one of those hobbies where they bring their family and like the kids are climbing, they're all happy because they're not really as concerned about losing their life like somebody who's lead climbing. And that's why I enjoy top rope climbing. I thoroughly enjoy knowing that somebody is taking care of me and my life is in somebody else's hands just as much as mine. But anyway, back to our story. So Corey was the lead climber that day, and he set the route, and he hooked everything up, and he got us all set up so we could all top rope climb for the rest of the day. And so we climbed literally all day, and it was so hot, like I've never felt this type of experience. I've never experienced this type of heat in my life. I'm pretty sure like a layer of my skin just like sweated off. It was so bad. And, we climbed, but the day before, I was having a really hard time with this climb. I couldn't get all the way up. And we had two other girls with us that day. And they were so sweet. And they were just like, it's okay, Jessie. Like, we see that you've gotten halfway. You can come down. It's all good. Like, go you. And in my mind, I'm going, okay, literally, Corey and Ian are going to, like, put me through crap if I come down because they don't let me off the hook. They're like super mean, like older brothers that are so sick and tired of their little sister hanging out with them that they make her do stuff that she doesn't want to do for the sake of her not wanting to come back and hang out with them. So I came down and I knew I was going to get called out. Like I just knew I was. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm so dumb. Like I should have tried harder. But mind you, climbing is hard and the exhaustion was real. Like I was ready to come down and I needed to. And so I just sat back, and then the next day, it was just me, Ian, and Corey. And I didn't climb at all that day. I didn't really want to. And they climbed for a couple hours, and then we were about done, ready to come home, and they said, do you want to do the last climb? Like, do you just want to do it? And I'm like, yeah. Really, I was like, no. So I strapped in, and I started climbing. And before I started climbing, Ian looks at me like so serious, and he was like, failure is not an option. And Corey was like, we will not let you down. Like, I was thinking like spiritually, like, oh, good, like they've got me. Like, they're not going to, he was like, literally like, we're not letting you down. Like, if you want to come down, you're not coming down. Like, we're physically not going to let the rope let you down. And so it was like, cool. And so I started climbing. But you know what? Like, I got up to the top of that wall. So one, because those two believed in me and encouraged me the way that they did, it gave me the strength to get to the top. Those other two girls, they just, like, let me accept the fact that I didn't want to climb. Like, it was that I didn't want to climb. They're like, oh, you're a good girl, whatever. So I climbed to the top, and I'm literally, like all I know is I just need to touch the anchor, and I can come down. And so I touch it, and I'm like, I give the motion to come down. Yeah, that's me right there. I'm like, okay, my thumbs are up. I'm like, okay, let's come down now. And both Corey and Ian are like, no, stand on the top. I was like, no. And so I was like literally, like, I didn't want to, like stand up on it, so I'm just, like, inching on top of it. Like, I look like this sweaty slug, just trying to find like any surface area possible just to cling on because I was so scared. And I did it, and I got to the top, and I like pivoted my body around so my little head peeked over. I'm like, okay, I'm ready to come down. And so I just gave a thumbs up again. Like, I had to do this so many times, and I started to inch off, and they're like, wait, can you untie the anchor? And I'm like, what do you mean, can I untie the anchor? Like, that is what's holding me on to this rock, and I am not going to untie it. They're like, this is the last climb of the day. We need the equipment. We're tired. I was like, yeah, I'm not hanging out with them, like, at least for 3 months after this. And so I had to untie that anchor up there, okay? So I'm, like, sitting on top of that little pebble at the very top, and I'm untying all this anchor. I'm hooking it in. I've got to keep all the equipment on me so that when I come down, I can, retrieve all the equipment as I'm coming down. And so I'm climbing down, and I'm literally praying like I've never prayed before. Like, Jesus, please do not let me die. This is not really how I envisioned my life ending. And I did. I did it by the grace of God because God's so good and he moves like that. And I got to the bottom and I looked at them and they were like, good job. And I was like, okay, let's go home. Like, I do not like you guys. Like, put me in the back of the car. You guys can have the heyday in the front. I don't want to be around you. And even though I was like a nervous wreck, literally I was like a nervous wreck, they made me focus on the task at hand. And they made me focus on the steps to get through it. I honestly don't even remember I don't even remember the height drop. All I remember was they were like, okay, untie this. Okay, pull this carabiner out, blah, 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 blah. And when I realized I got to the top, literally all I did was turn around so I could look down because I wanted to come down. But when you're on the top, it puts you in the perfect position to look up, to be up. You know, like when I was up there, like I didn't have to worry about what was going on, you know, around me or underneath of me. And I had to focus on being up, staying up, looking up, but not giving up. Because there was work to be done in order for me to press on to the next step, which was to get down to the bottom. And they push me so hard in physical ways, like they really do, especially when it comes to climbing. But they also just as equally push me in spiritual seasons, you know, that I face that really require me to focus on Christ. And we need friends like that. We truly, truly do. It even says so in Ecclesiastes 4, 2 are better than one because they have good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up, but pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Look up, look up, look up, and never forget that is where your help comes from. Never forget that. Look to your neighbor and say, will you help me look up? Say it to your neighbor. Will you help me look up? Help me look up. Remind me to look up. Create an accountability partner today that you know when you walk out of these doors, they can text you, they can call you and say, hey, how are you doing today? Have you looked up? Like create an accountability partner like that. I think together this church could easily begin to create a culture that consistently pushes each other to move forward in faith, and that's powerful if we can start to create that. So this is our last point, move forward. Moving on after something life-changing has happened to you can be bittersweet because you're closing a chapter in your life so that you can begin a new one. And you get to think about where you were and how you got to where you are right now. What am I? What am I right now? Well, I'm better for that situation. Pastor Chuck talked about being better for it. Better from your past so you can be better for your future. I'm stronger in my faith because I went through that. My character's just developed through that season. Those are things you get to think about as you're closing chapters to start new ones. But some people have a really difficult time with closing chapters. Me. I have a hard time with closing chapters. And they struggle to see the positive side to what's happened in their lives. And that's sometimes what keeps them from starting a new chapter. And some people even ask me still, you know, why didn't you ever question God about why your dad died? Because my job wasn't to question God. My job was to ask him to help me handle the burdens that I was bearing. It would have done me no good to ask God why things happened to me the way that they did. They happened. Things happen. That's the way life goes. So for me, my problem wasn't with looking up. I was fine with looking up. I would say, God, I understand this happened, but I really need you right now. And that was what I was good at, was looking up. I could look up and move forward and look up and move forward and look up and move forward, but I was forgetting something. I was forgetting to let go, forgetting to figure out what I'm holding on to that's causing me to still do this when I want to be doing this, when I want to be moving forward instead of coming back around. I had coffee with a friend of mine this week, Erica. She's actually sitting over there. And we were talking about our walk with Christ and how it's so easy to get distracted and move away, you know, and do your own little thing, but then come back and meet God and walk beside him. And, you know, I couldn't help but to think there's got to be something that's keeping us from constantly doing this. You know, we go away and we come back and we go away and we come back. Well, what are we holding on to that's so luring us over here instead of right here? And it's letting go. And that was what held me up from truly moving forward. And guys, I use my story as an example, but that's just what it is. It's an example. You have your own story. You get to fill in your own blanks. What is your cycle right now? What habits are you in this entire thing, this entire process? Are you stuck on looking up, but you're ready to move forward? Or can you let go? Like, what is it for you? And these steps are choices. It goes back to the very beginning of all of this. It's a choice for you to make. And there's a difference between dismissing what's happened to us and letting go of what's happened. You have to decide which one you'll choose. Dismissing something is pretending that what has happened isn't real and that we can get through it. It's like sweeping dust under a rug. It's gone for now, but it'll always be there as long as the rug hides it. Letting go is acknowledging what happened, having emotions towards it, and then allowing it to be used for your good by giving it away to God. And I believe each person in this building could move on from something they have been holding on to for far too long today by shaking out the rug and letting God take care of the mess. When you don't wrestle with what's in here, we're fooling ourselves into thinking that everything else is okay out there. And there's a small devotional or a short story. I'm not really sure what it is, but anyway, it's good. And I read it multiple times, and it's helped me be mindful of what areas I've closed off in my life to God. And in this book, My Heart, Christ's Home, the author describes rooms in the house, like areas in our lives that we tend to expose or hide from Christ, and how easy it is for us to have company over, but just to stay in the dining room and just in the living room. It's an easy place for us to have fellowship. Well, what's wrong with the other rooms in your house? Everybody knows there's that one person that's like, show me the house, give me a tour. And then you have to think in your mind, is the kids' room cleaned? The workroom looks terrible. Somebody should have just shut that door, locked it, and threw away the key. You know what? We'll just stay downstairs. She just needs to see the downstairs, that's all. But when God knocks on your heart, is your response similar? Is it similar? Hey, it is so good to see you. It's really poor timing, actually, and I got some things I need to do, but I can give you a call and we can hang out later. What do you think? Maybe your place? Let's not do my place. My place, no, just not my place at all. That's just so easy. Or at least if you do let him in, you just close off certain rooms. You know, he doesn't need to see that right now. This is a quote from the book. Excuse me. Don't be discouraged because you cannot do much for God. It's not our ability, but our availability that's important. Give what you are to Christ. Be sensitive and responsive to what he wants to do. Trust him. He will surprise you with what he can do through you. Guys, the book is literally like 15 pages. It's $2 for a pack of 5 on Amazon. Go get it. It's cool. It's helpful. God doesn't care about your mess. He's ready to sit in it with you. He'll sort the rest out later. But for now, he wants to focus on you. And he just asks you to trust him. And he wants you to take the next steps to move forward with him. So I'm going to close. And I just want to remind you that God grants us grace. He's graceful. He knows the process isn't easy to let go, to look up, and to move forward. And I spent 7 years of my life dealing with something I didn't even know existed until 2 days ago. And then God promises to be there for you in each step as you let go, look up, and move forward. And here's how I know why. God will bear your burdens. Then Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I'm humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls." God will guide your steps. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you which path to take. Proverbs 3. God hears your cries. The Lord hears his people when they call to him for help. He rescues them from all of their troubles. Psalms 34. God gives you grace. Each time he said, "My grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness." So now I am glad to boast about my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ can work through me. And that's in 2 Corinthians. Guys, would you just stand with me? He is so good to you. God is so good. He sees favor in your life. He loves you. He forgives you for every time you ever tried to walk on your own. But he also beckons you to identify those things you need to let go of. To remind yourselves, we have to look up. And not only to just move forward by yourselves, to move forward with him, to walk with him. It's not easy walking out of a season in your life where you've lost your job, when you feel alone and you have no idea how you're going to support your family. It's not easy walking away from that, wondering what the next steps are going to be, but God promises he'll be there for you. It's not easy getting the report back that the cancer's come back and let go of all of the emotion and the struggle that you dealt with the first time you went through this and the first time you thought you were moving forward from it. It's not easy to accept that again. But God gives you grace for it. He promises again to walk you through it. I don't believe that God sends you hurricanes. I think he uses them. He uses them for his glory and your good. And that's why we take joy in our suffering, because there is good in it. And Father, I'm just going to pray right now that you would just equip us to know what it is that we need to let go of, and to just kind of check ourselves in our list of priorities and figure out what it is that's keeping us from focusing so much on us and keeping us from looking up to you. And Father, some people are in the middle of their chapter, some people are in the beginning of the chapter, and even those that are closing their chapter, I pray that you would give us the strength to move forward with faith, to accept the challenge, and to love you and others well, Father, and to just create such an emphasis on you in our testimonies. That when we see somebody else going through what they're going through, we can look back and say, my God did so much for me in that season. I want him to do the same for you. Your stories are beautiful, guys, and I don't know all of them, but God does, and he says they're beautiful. They're broken and they're shattered, but they're redeemed. And he just wants to use you and display you in a showcase to show the world that you are a child of God, you are loved, you are provided for, and he wants to do that for everyone. And so God, as we leave today, I just ask that you would bless us, you would keep us safe, and you would always remind us to let go and look up and move forward. And Father, if there's somebody in this place tonight, this morning, if there's somebody in this place this morning that you feel is ready to just let go of it all and just anticipate you for the next steps, I just ask that you would open their hearts, Father, to know that you are there for them right now. You are right here waiting for them to walk it out with you. And guys, I feel like if you want to make that step this morning, God is telling you to take it. And I'm going to give you an opportunity this morning. If you are ready to make a change in your life and you're ready to start a new chapter, I want you to just ask God to come into your life, and you're going to get to do that. We're going to count to 3, and I want all eyes closed, all heads bowed, and on the count of 3, if you would just raise your hand right where you're at. Nobody's looking at you. If you would raise your hand, we're going to pray that your new chapter begins today. So on the count of 3, if that's you, 1, 2, 3, if that's you today, thank you. Thank you. I see your hands. Thank you. Yes. Yes. God is so good. Yes, he sees you right where you're at. He sees you right where you're at. And so where you are, everybody's going to pray this together. We're going to pray this together. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Father, today, we accept that we are broken and we are sinners. there's only one person that can help us live a life we are called to live. Father, we know that there is nothing in us that can keep us strong. And so today I ask you to come into my life, to be my strength, to care for me, and to give me the grace to move forward with my life. And from this day on, I promise to live my life for you. Even in the seasons where it's hard, I promise to let go, look up, and move forward. In Jesus' name, amen.